Hello, hello. Welcome to a little bit of a unique episode because I'm doing one of those pull the curtain back, let's have a conversation, sharing kind of moments to just bring you up to speed with some stuff that's happening behind the scenes, some choices that I've made that will impact our this here internet relationship where you might be used to me showing up on the podcast, showing up on YouTube, showing up on social media, and I need to let you know, as the title would indicate, spoiler alert, that I am stepping away. I am going to be taking a mini sabbatical. That's what we are calling it. Sort of, kind of. That's what I'm calling it in this moment. I am going to be taking the summer off. Beginning in June, I'm taking 3 months off from everything, from content creation, from all my coaching work, from social media, from my business as a whole. I am totally and completely unplugging from my role as coach. And like Amy, business owner, and Amy, content creator. And it's been a real trip making this decision. I'm not going to go into like every nuanced detail about it, although we are going to talk about it a little bit because what I witnessed, like the idiotic ride that I took myself on in coming to this decision that I needed to and wanted to take some time off, was so gooftastic. Like just the way that I overcomplicated this for myself needs to be unpacked a little bit because this is something that I know so many of us do in all kinds of areas of our lives. And it's something that I talk about all the time in terms of listening to yourself, paying attention to your life, following your deeper knowing, giving yourself permission. It's like this is just another pebble in the pond of, hey, Amy, like, will you just listen to yourself and do what you know you need to do and want to do and not make it really complicated? Like, maybe we could try that for a change. And there's just still these parts of me that are like, no, doing what I want to do is really hard. Listening to myself is really challenging. Like, answering the call of my knowing and my soul, like, I don't want to, like, there's like this whiny sort of adolescent, and I say this with all the love in the world because I don't judge this part of myself. I'm more very curious about her at this point. But there's this part of me that is still just operating from this place of like, I don't get to design life on my own terms, and I have to subscribe to certain ideologies or behaviors or expectations that actually don't suit me at all, or that like, aren't authentic to me, that are like these weird indoctrinated things that I don't even realize that I'm like following them until someone else comes along and is like, hey, you don't have to be doing things that way. And I'm like, I don't. It's really interesting when we bump into a spot in our lives where, we know there's something that we want to do. There's a deeper ask that's coming through, like something being asked of us, an invitation presents itself to be like, hey, you should go in this direction. And the ways that we talk ourselves out of it or make it hard or complicated, like, I'm just so sick of that shit. And this is a huge, like, me saying yes to this sabbatical and me saying yes to taking some concentrated time off and totally just resetting myself is like a huge gauntlet that I needed to cross in my own healing journey, growth work, because this is something that I have been feeling called to do for a long time. Like since I really hit, a potent wall of burnout in 2019, like I got knocked on my ass by life in a variety of ways. And really like had to consciously start slowing down, making space, like reducing a lot of the non-essential things that I was saying yes to or just wanting to do because, well, especially as far as business is related, you might not know this. I don't know if I've ever really directly addressed it this way, but I'm 1,000% a recovering workaholic, like 10,000% recovering workaholic. I fucking love my work. Like I love coaching and I love getting to be a creator online. And I love being of service to this larger mission in the world. Like it's my favorite fucking thing. And part of my personality type is that when I discover a favorite thing, I go so deep and so hard on it to the point where like I, I can't tell that it's not good for me to be going so deep and so hard. That's what she said. But I I have been incrementally slowing down, making space, making changes. And yet I could always hear this sort of internal knowing that like it's not enough. Like you need a reset. You need a hard pause. You need to take a real break. You need to just disconnect from the momentum of everything that you've been building and creating and just doing with your life since, I started doing this work in 2014. I knew that at some point I was going to have to really, really unplug, slow down, make space. And even knowing that and feeling that, I was still doing this thing of like, but no, like, but I don't think so. Like, just kind of sweeping it under the rug and thinking that I could half-ass it, sort of, and that there would be a way for me to avoid this hard reset, take a break, call, that was coming through and being asked of me. And I couldn't. I just couldn't, because here's the thing that I've come to learn about how knowing operates in our lives. Like I use the term knowing. Some people say like, intuition or inner guidance or all these things. I really talk about it on this level of like, we all have this internal knowing of what is aligned or not aligned, right? And like what's a yes and what's a no. And so much of what happens to us in our lives from a very, very young age is we get conditioned out of and led away from listening to that inner knowing on so many levels. And really what's modeled for us too is like a lot of grownups and other people in life and people in our lives and people in positions of power who also have been like, stripped away of this ability to listen to that inner knowing. Not exclusively across the board, but most people really struggle with this. And most women have a really fucking hard time with it. Because why? Because patriarchy. I mean, do we need to go down this road again? All roads lead back to that, right? So, I had this really clear sense that I was going to have to hard stop and unplug and step away from everything that I've been doing. And I really didn't like that. Like I really didn't want to do that. Some part of me wanted it, right? Like this like deep, wise, internal guide giving part of me knew that that would be a really good idea, knows that it's a really good idea. All these other parts of me, like workaholic Amy, and no, I don't want to have to make the changes that would be required to say yes to that Amy. And what will people think, Amy? And people pleaser Amy. And just the Amy who's comfortable doing what she'd always done was like, no, we don't want to do that. So what we'll do, and this is what I see in so many of the women that I work with and conversations that I have with so many of you, what many of you do, is we make it really, really fucking complicated. Like in an effort to ignore the knowing and say no to the thing that we really want, we overcomplicate and we make all of these justifications and excuses and like rational reasons for why it's not possible or why it's a bad idea or why it doesn't make sense or why we shouldn't do it. Or we talk to a bunch of people in our lives often strategically we go to the people who we know will side with like, hey, don't do that. Hey, that's a bad idea. Hey, who do you think you are, to reinforce the idea of like, oh, making that change or doing that thing or saying yes to that really like isn't smart right now. So it's like this way that we make a case to justify not following the deeper wise thing that we know that we need to do, or that we know, yeah, that some part of us really wants to do. And as a result of this, we expend a ton of energy in this inner tug of war, fighting with ourselves, going back and forth, you know, just wasting life force when we do not need to, when really we could just be operating from this place of like, oh, this is what I know needs to happen, so this is what we're going to do. Oh, I am being asked to XYZ, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step up to the plate and be a big fucking girl, and I'm going to XYZ. It's not complicated. It's just what needs to happen. It's just what I want to do. It's just what I'm being directed towards. It's just the aligned choice. It's actually not complicated. Overcomplicating stuff is like the number one way we cock block ourselves from the most divine aligned path. Like overcomplicating, making excuses, internal tug of warring. It is so dumb. And I see it in myself all the time. I'm much better at catching myself in it, but there are still these little pockets and places where, and this is why it's so hard. Like, this is why we all need outside people, like a coach, like a friend who will give it to us really straight, like a mentor or someone who can see outside. Because when you are doing that yourself, like when you're making excuses for why you can't do the thing that you know needs to happen or that you know that you want to do, it feels so real to you. It feels so real. Like one of my favorite sayings for this, my friend Jason Zook said this to me years ago, and I repeat it all the time. You cannot see the label from inside the jar, right? And like if you look at your life and your sense of self as like a jar that you live inside of, you can't see all of the ways that you cock block yourself and overcomplicate and limit and make things confusing that aren't confusing and make things hard that aren't really hard, because you're inside the jar. Someone on the outside can read the label and be like, oh, here's what's going on. And this is just something I want to say. Thank God for those people. Like, thank God for the people who are just like, why are you overcomplicating this? Why are you making this really hard? What would we do without those people? I'm so grateful for those people in my life. And I had multiple conversations with people like that who supported me in greenlighting, taking this break, hitting pause, stepping away, resetting, because honestly, without those people and without those conversations, I maybe still would be up my own ass, making it complicated and making all these reasons for why I couldn't do it. Now, I just want to say a couple things I really quickly want to address. That me sharing this, well, it can go a few different ways, right? What I've usually found from watching other content creators be like, okay, guys, I'm taking a break, or I actually I don't think I'm going to do the podcast anymore. And also for me going through my own seasons of like taking unofficial breaks or hitting pause on things, is like it tends to feel like a way bigger deal than it actually is. And I don't want to come, but it's also like I want to be sensitive to the fact that some of you like might be disappointed or like, have feelings about me taking a break. So I don't want to like completely be dismissive of those, but I don't want to do the thing that I see so many people do where they're like, okay, this is really hard, but I just don't feel, like I can really keep up with the schedule that I've been doing, and I try really hard and I just don't feel like I don't want this to be some content creator sob story because everything's fine actually, and like the sun does not rise and set with me putting out new podcast episodes or creating content for YouTube. Like there's a plethora of amazing people to follow and to learn from, and I think breaks are actually very healthy and normal in relationships. I think it's great to take time and space from people and things that we love, because absence makes the heart grow fonder, and everybody gets a chance to like take a breather and then come back to the person and be like, oh yeah, you're fun, I love you, this is awesome. So whatever your feelings are, whether you're like Amy who really cares, or you're like, wow, I'm actually really gonna like miss getting to check in with you in the internet or like, listen to your podcast, all of those responses and reactions are completely valid and appropriate. And I really just trust, as I always do, that like you're a super powerful, capable, amazing human being who's, like gonna be just fine. And I don't want anyone, whether it's a client, whether it's someone in my personal life, whether it's someone who follows me on social media, to be dependent on me showing up every day. Like that's super unhealthy. So I don't want to foster that kind of relationship with my channels across the board. And I also just like want to be a stand for, like doing what you need to do, and taking breaks when it's necessary, and putting your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health first when it's required. And and more than anything, like me really walking my talk of saying like you are allowed to design life on your own terms, and you don't have to, automatically fulfill a designated role or set of expectations that someone else set up for you. And just because, for me, one of the things that I had to really make peace with was like there's so many people that I see online or in the coaching sphere, or peers and colleagues of mine who like are completely fine showing up all the time, and don't experience burnout or don't feel a degree of friction with it, and like envy that I've had for those people. Because since 2019, when I got hit really hard with burnout, and then in recovery from that, it has been something that I've kind of gone into and come out of, and gone into and come out of, where I've had periods of feeling super inspired and aligned, and then these periods where I really felt like, wow, this feels like a job that I have to clock in for and clock out of. And I don't think that's something that a lot of people want to talk about, because owning your own business or getting to be a content creator is so like glorified and treated like it's like this holy grail. Oh my God, that's so amazing that you get to do that. And there's tons of amazing things about it, and I chose it. So obviously I'm digging it. And like any path that you walk in life, professional or otherwise, there are challenges and drawbacks and things that make it difficult. And one of the things that's made it really difficult for me is being able to set super clear, awesome boundaries with myself about, when I would work or not work, or kind of reining myself in, because I do tend to have this runaway train personality that when I'm invested in something or when I'm passionate about something, I throw myself into it entirely. And I'm just getting to a point where like physically my body is like, this doesn't work. And I have to be responsible for that. And I have to prioritize, like, me being able to take better care of myself so that I actually can show up and do this job and do what I love to do. And the thing that I found to be, sort of most fascinating about making this decision to take a break for 3 months right now, that's what we have outlined, um, is that really, like I was the one who was making it a really complicated decision. And I was the one who was really resisting taking the steps to finalizing it. And for the most part, like every person that I've shared this with in my inner circle so far, at least, or people who work with me on my team, have been like so unbelievably supportive and on board and like, yes, that sounds great. And all of those things that, it's just being reflected back to me over and over again that, the more that we can really be attuned to our inner knowing about, like what's aligned and not aligned, and what's a yes and what's a no, and just follow those clear guidelines, that come from this deep place inside, just follow those truths, the easier life is, right? And the more satisfying it feels to just like wake up every day, because you're getting to live in integrity with yourself, versus when we like deny or ignore the thing that we know we need to do or the thing that we know we want to do, um, even if it's what feels like responsible or like the right thing to do, you always can tell with yourself when like you're not really listening or like you're not really answering the call or you're like shying away or overcomplicating or lying to yourself about something. Like we can always feel that, and it feels horrible, like absolutely terrible. So, the thing that I'm most grateful for in all of this thus far, is the immense amount of support and like people really hearing me and getting it. And also, yeah, being like, this isn't that big of a deal. Like people take summers off. You should probably do it. You haven't really taken a vacation like since you started your coaching business. So like now's as good a time as any. Um, also just wanting to recognize like the position that I'm in, where in terms of being a business owner and being my own boss, like that I get to call these kinds of shots in my life and step away and hit pause. But it's really funny because there have been like a couple different reactions when I've shared this with people, and that um I'd be curious, like, sort of which person are you? Because I think that this is one of the situations where it's like, oh, maybe there are kind of two types of people in the world. There's people who are like, oh my God, 3 months off. I would love to be able to do that. Like, that sounds absolutely incredible. Like, oh, yes, do it. And then there's people who are like, 3 months off. Like, what are you going to do? That sounds like kind of stressful. The idea of like taking a break for that long. Are you going to like lose your mind? Are you going to be okay? Like, do you want to have me on speed dial just in case you start to go off the deep end a little? I'm somewhere, I guess, a little bit in the middle of those two types of people, like people who are really comfortable with like taking space and doing their own thing and being completely unstructured. I, again, as a recovering workaholic, as someone who loves projects and is very hardworking and ambitious and mission driven in the world, this isn't something that I'm just saying yes to and being like, this is going to be so great. I think it's going to be really fucking weird. I think that it's going to really challenge me because so much of how I have derived joy and fulfillment and a sense of worth and value since I started my coaching business has been showing up to this job every day and sitting down and hitting record on video content or podcast content or showing up on social media, or yeah, like leading a call or, I get so much out of doing this work, and I'm a little bit anxious about what it's going to feel like to strip myself away from that and just get in touch with Amy, the human, and the woman and the person, who actually, isn't going to be showing up every day and what I'm going to encounter. Taking space and slowing down and getting back in touch with myself on a variety of deeper levels has been like the wildest journey I ever didn't intentionally sign up for. Like, well, a part of me signed up for it when she came to this planet, but in really kind of being forced to step back and embark on a different kind of healing journey that I didn't know was coming my way. I really, yeah, have had to look at all the places where I derive, so much power and fulfillment from being productive and from what I do versus who I am. And ultimately, that's what taking this break is about more than anything else, is really stepping into the truth that my value and worth doesn't stem from showing up for others, or it's not based in what I do in the world. It's just based in me being me. I don't mind crying on camera or crying on podcast when I know that it's what's going to happen. Like when I know that it's a sensitive topic, or I know that it's something that like feels emotional, I don't like it when it surprises me. And this in this moment is surprising me that this is clearly emotional. And it's only emotional, right? Because it's really, really true that the work that I've been doing with women, especially this past year, and activating more of my own feminine power and divine intelligence and all these things, has shown me all the places where I still do prescribe to this very incorrect patriarchal ideology that you're only as valuable as like you know what you can do, or who you are for other people, or what you produce and achieve in the world. And I'm so ready to like flip the bird to that, because what I see happen so often, and what my journey with that has really looked like, is a lot of the times just overdoing it and overriding our bodies and our being to fit some outside expectation of what makes you valuable and worthy and good and all of these things, versus just knowing that you're valuable and worthy and good because you're you, that you don't have to do anything, right? That you have nothing to prove, that there's nothing actually that you can achieve in this lifetime that will fill that internal hole of like false unworthiness. I've made, for me, like in my own growth healing journey, I have made so much progress in that arena. It overwhelms me, and yet, you know, I find myself bumping into this spot where I know I still have work to do there. And yeah, it's a tricky thing, you know, to be sharing all of this and making these choices, and obviously there's aspects of this that feel vulnerable to me, and that are unexpectedly quite emotional, or stuff that's just sensitive. It's always hard to share things like this and not necessarily know, you know, you're not here in this room with me, and I can't feel you or see how you're receiving it or see the impact that it's having. My biggest fear in making this decision, and I didn't even realize that this was the fear until I started making it more real for myself and having these conversations, I realized, wow, I'm like really afraid that people are going to judge me for doing this and think that like I'm lazy, or think that I'm like, you know, like project all this like shame stuff on me of like, well, who are you to take time off, blah blah blah. All of this stuff that, again, is like, it's mostly existing in my head and internally, and like no one's actually saying that to me. And if you feel that way, like, please just keep it to yourself. You don't need to comment or like reach out to me and let me know that you're judging me. But again, just going back to sort of what I was saying at the beginning, I think this is, you know, what we really often do to ourselves when we're wanting to say yes to something that's outside of our comfort zone, or make a choice that feels sort of like risky or untraditional or out of character. For a really long time, I've been the like super passionate, hardworking, get it doneer, just in my life. And it's challenging to let that go when that's something that I've just identified with for a really long time. Um and yeah, I guess, you know, in me sharing this, well, one, it's just like, I mean, I need to have this conversation with you, because even though we have podcast episodes that are scheduled, you know, that have been recorded previously and they'll be coming out in the weeks to come. And same with YouTube content. We have clips and, things that like you've been seeing from me that are already scheduled in the pipeline to go live down the road. Transparency and authenticity and you being on this journey with me is important to me. Like showing up as my transparent full self, regardless of how it's received, regardless of what people think, regardless of whether someone understands or doesn't understand. Like my work is always going to be about just more and more revealing and more sharing and more opening into who I am and what I know and what's aligned and what's in integrity, and trusting that, yeah, like the right people always get it. And that it's ultimately of service to everyone when we can show up aligned and in integrity and authentically and transparently. Like, that's so much more of what we need. But it still feels kind of shaky weird. And it's still clearly, there's like some insecurity here. And um and I'm not going to like tie this up in a super neat bow and be like, and here's what we do about that. And here's like the 3-step plan to fix that. All I can really tell you is that like I'm always committed to walking my talk and practicing what I preach. And I would never ask anything of anyone who, watches me online or follows me on social media. I would never point you in a given direction. Like, hey, you should make aligned choices and you should listen to yourself and you should, show up as your authentic self, if I'm not willing to step up to the plate and do the same. So that's what this episode is. And that's why I'm sharing this. And I'm a lot of things. I'm excited to see what I uncover and what's revealed to me during the break, because I know that it's going to be really, truly, like I can just feel that it's going to be really profound and healing for me and a very good thing. And I'm excited for whatever comes afterwards and what, wants to be shared. And I'm also like nervous and anxious and sort of overwhelmed at the prospect of all of it. But more than anything else, these are the things that I just keep saying on the podcast, in video form, to my clients. Ultimately, you know what is true and best for you. And even though we might overcomplicate and might avoid it and might, not want to listen to what it is that we know, in my experience, it always finds a way of catching up with us. So, this is one that I like hit snooze on for a while. And I'm taking this step now to hit reset and take a break, before it becomes like a really like glaring 5-alarm fire that it's absolutely required of me. And if there's something that that you want to do or need to do, or something that you feel called towards, I would just invite you to lean into it and just start having more honest conversations about it and start following it, because nothing feels better than alignment and integrity. Like that really ought to be all of our like new drugs of choice. Alignment and integrity over everything. It feels so fucking good. Even if it's not what's always comfortable, or it's not, what other people would want from us. It makes it so much easier to go to sleep with yourself every night and wake up when you know that you are living in alignment with like the wise, deepest soul knowing parts of yourself. And that's really what I'm a stand for, more than anything else. So we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. Really excited for the next leg of the journey. And like I said, You are going to continue to see podcast episodes from me go live and some YouTube videos and things beyond the end of May, because we have a bunch of stuff that's like backlogged and batched. So you can look forward to those hits. But I will be off the grid, unplugged, taking some concentrated time off beginning in June. And I look forward very much to catching up with you in real time when I'm back.